As quoted by Wikipedia, a near-death experience, or NDE, is a personal experience associated with death or impending death. Such experiences may encompass a variety of sensations including detachment from the body, feelings of levitation, total serenity, security, warmth, the experience of absolute dissolution, and the presence of a light, often seen as a tunnel through which the person travels to arrive at their destination on the other side. Relax and find a comfortable spot and settle in to enjoy the video as we cover the top 5 celebrity near-death experiences. Number 5. Johnny Cash. Johnny Cash was an American singer and songwriter, guitarist, and actor who was one of the best-selling musicians of all time. Before his death in 2003, Cash was inducted into some of the preeminent musical halls of fame, crossing from country music to rock and roll, and even gospel music. Cash had a natural talent for connecting with everyone, from the common man to kings and queens, and everyone in between. Cash battled drug addictions throughout his life, and in 1968 entered the Nickajack Cave in Tennessee to attempt to commit suicide while under the influence of drugs. While in the cave, he felt exhausted and near the end of his rope when he suddenly felt a presence in the cave with him, and he described this as being God. The presence was so powerful that he gave into it and found his way out of the cave while following a faint light and a breeze to get to the entrance. After this, Johnny began his long road to recovery from drug addiction, and after 2 years, in 1970, successfully kicked his habit. A second event in 1988 found Johnny fighting for his life as a result of pneumonia that he contracted after a double bypass surgery. In his story, he related that he left his body and managed to see heaven before he returned to his body. He described it as being drawn towards a peaceful light and was very unhappy that he had to return from this place that he felt so much attraction for. Cash said of his experience, quote, "I just don't have any fear of death. I'm very much at peace with myself and with God. And when He sees fit to take me from this world, I'll be reunited with some good people I haven't seen for a while. That great light is a light that leads me on and directs me and guides me. That great light is the light of this world. That great light is the light out of this world and into that better world. And I'm looking forward to walking into that great light." Afterwards, he often said that his NDE changed his life for the better, and that he focused more on producing spiritual and gospel music as a result. In September of 2003, Johnny Cash died 4 months after his wife June Carter Cash, and the world lost one of its greatest musical talents. Number 4. Elizabeth Taylor. Elizabeth Taylor was born in early 1932 and became one of the greatest American screen actresses of all time. She started her career in the early 1940s and retired from most film appearances by the 1960s, but remained well-known and in the public eye until her death in 2011. Elizabeth had her own near-death experience at a hospital in London where she was pronounced dead 4 times and had no vitals for around 5 minutes. She was able to see her own body from a vantage point where she could see the doctors and nurses working on her, and she described how she tried to gain their attention and to move her body to let them know that she was still with them. It was at this point she described floating into a tunnel, and in which she met other people who greeted her as she passed through. When she exited the tunnel, she saw a welcoming white light filled with warmth and love radiating from it. In her own words, the sensation was, quote, "like being in liquid mercury. It was like being weightless." She later described meeting her ex-husband, Mike Todd, and she wanted more than anything to be with him. She related that Mike told her that it wasn't her time and that he pushed her to go back to her life and told her that she would have to fight to return. After her near-death experience occurred, her death was prematurely reported and her obituary was printed in a number of papers before they could be recalled. And in a later interview, Elizabeth remarked that she had never had such good reviews. When Elizabeth returned from her brush with death and began to recover at the London hospital, she told everyone she knew, including the doctors and nurses, what had happened to her. But then she decided to keep quiet about it until years later, when she saw similar accounts to her own and she began to relate her experiences to a more open-minded world. Number 3. Sharon Stone. Sharon Stone is an actress who came into her own in the 1980s and still works in the business of acting, modeling, and film production. She is most notable for her dramatic roles in films like Basic Instinct, Casino, Catwoman, and many other notable films. She also appeared as a guest in television series like Law & Order and Special Victims Unit, and won an Emmy Award for her appearance in The Practice in 2004. In 2001, Sharon began to experience terrible headaches and ended up in an emergency room, only to discover that she had a brain bleed that necessitated surgery. While in the hospital, the doctors made the discovery that one of the arteries in her brain was nearly torn in two. Sharon experienced a near-death experience moments just after getting out of an MRI machine while talking with her doctors. In her own words, quote, "It's sort of like passing out, but you sort of pass up." She related that the experience started off with an explosion of white light. Quote, "It's just a lot of white light, and you see people that have passed on, and they'll talk to you, and then you pop right back into your body." Sharon said that the experience left her with a sense of well-being and peace, and that she had no fear of death as a result. She described this as an incredible sense of well-being. Describing her lack of fear, she said, "It's very near, and very safe, and loving, and gentle, and okay, and there's nothing to be afraid of." I had a real journey with this that took me to places both here and beyond that affected me so profoundly that my life will never again be the same. I get to be not afraid of dying, and I get to tell other people that it's a fabulous thing and that death is a gift. And not that you should kill yourself, but that when death comes to you, as it will, that it is a glorious and beautiful thing. This kind of giant vortex of white light was upon me, and I kind of, poof, sort of took off into this glorious bright white light, and I started to see and be met by some of my friends. But it was very fast, whoosh, and suddenly I was back. I was in my body, and I was in the room. Sharon Stone recovered slowly from her ordeal, losing everything in the process. Her husband divorced her, and she lost the ability to walk, hear, talk, and even remember. In her own words, "Death isn't all it's cracked up to be. Everything got richer for me through this experience. Everything got better for me through this experience. It was like starting over. Every death is a rebirth." Number 2, Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan was a public figure for most of his life, beginning with his Hollywood days as an actor and ultimately culminated in him becoming the 40th President of the United States. Reagan starred in a number of 1940s, 1950s, and 1960s Hollywood films and television shows before going on to become the 33rd Governor of California. While working on a film with Shirley Temple, Reagan became gravely ill with viral pneumonia, and Reagan spent his illness with chills and fevers and ultimately began to find it difficult to breathe. At one point, he decided it was too much work to breathe, and a nurse who stayed with him the entire night forced him to keep awake and to keep breathing and to not let him die. Reagan survived the ordeal, and when he tried to track down the nurse to thank her, she was nowhere to be found. Family members later on expressed a strong belief that the nurse was an angel, and this would not be the last time that he had an experience with a mystery nurse who would help him get through a difficult medical challenge. On March 30th, 1981, President Reagan, Press Secretary James Brady, Police Officer Thomas Delahanty, and Secret Service Agent Tim McCarthy were shot at close range by John Hinckley Jr. outside of the Washington Hotel as the president left the building. While Reagan was fighting for his life after the assassination attempt, he was having trouble breathing. His wife described his skin as being white as a sheet, and while the nation was relieved that he was still alive, Few knew how touch and go it had really been for the president as he recovered from his wounds. Reagan recalled praying while he was being treated, and while half conscious, he felt someone holding his hands. In his own words, quote, "It was a soft feminine hand," he wrote in his autobiography, An American Life. "I felt it come up and touch mine and then hold on tight to it. It gave me a wonderful feeling. Even now I find it difficult to explain how reassuring and how wonderful it felt." No one was able to find out who the person was that Reagan described, since access to him was controlled by the Secret Service at his hospital bed. Despite his best efforts, he could not find out the identity of this mystery nurse, and it was later surmised by Reagan's children that their father had been pulled through the ordeal by an angel who appeared to him as a nurse. Number 1. William Peterson. William Peterson is an actor and producer who is best known for playing Dr. Gil Grissom in the CBS series CSI, or Crime Scene Investigation, which detailed the cases and lives of a fictional crime scene unit based out of Las Vegas. The series ran from 2000 to 2015. Peterson had starred in such films as Cousins, To Live and Die in L.A., and Manhunter. In 2009, Peterson was honored with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame for his many television and film credits, and he made his last appearance on the television show CSI in 2015. Peterson had a near-death experience in the 1980s, which he described in an interview for Playboy magazine, which he described as follows. "Years ago, doing a play in Chicago, I cut my finger in half on stage. We obviously had to stop because, well, I didn't have a finger. By the time they got me into the ER, I had lost a lot of blood and I passed out. I could hear the doctors working on me saying they'd lost my vital signs. I was on the All That Jazz escalator with a long tunnel and a lot of white light. Then I specifically remember a dominant male voice saying, 'It's not your time, get off. Get off the escalator, you've got shit to do.' I came to and got sewed up. Something in me changed and a sort of knowledge that somewhere on the other side, it's good. For weeks, the more I talked about it, the more freaked out people got. Some of them were like, okay, whatever, you took too many drugs. And there was a great desire to get to the light. I could tell it was a great, great place, full of love and peace and crap like that. You know, postcard stuff. I remember the whole rest of the night I was sort of blissed out by having seen that." Peterson's character in life seems to have changed as a result of this near-death experience. If you look at his character Gil Grissom in the series CSI, he almost walks through all of the series episodes in a transcendental kind of meditative state. He's always the calmest guy in the room, and he takes everything as it comes, and he's not freaked out by life. And you just have to wonder how much of himself is represented from that near-death experience in the 1980s. Who's to say? This seems to be a common thread with many NDE survivors. They come back with an assurance that death is not the end, and that the most important things in life are love, patience, and a sense of continuity, and that the meaning of life extends beyond the physical. I had my own near-death experience at age 28, and it left me with a certainty of the presence of spirit, and that life is to be lived in the now and not to remain sheltered behind a safety net. The only reason that we are here is to find out who we are and to do our best to help others and to show love to everyone and everything we can while we're here. It's really that simple. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next video.